Hello and welcome to the Game Against Depression podcast, hosted by your boy, your guy, your friendly neighborhood mental health advocate, Gad, as always. And we're back in a very strange time to be back. Since the launch of the channel, I've kind of come in and out of trying to do recordings as life, school, what have you, kind of was still in my view, and priorities were different. And now I feel like both I'm in a place as far as being done with school, I'm in a place as far as just having found work, and also in a place mentally and psychologically where I feel I can come back to this platform and have a more genuine delivery and more genuine discussion on what I think is important to be focusing on. And one big change is that there is a global pandemic happening since the start of this channel, and lockdown has kind of been not in full swing, I guess, because I think a lot of states and different places have lifted it, but now a lot of places are actually going back into lockdown, and there's reports now that things could even get more severe. So I figured this would probably be the best time to try and make a comeback and start touching on some of the things I think are important and that have been highlighted by this pandemic. So I'm going to be looking to my left here just for the sake of double checking some facts and figures, but this is just one of many reports that I've seen. There's actually quite a bit of data out there. Check your sources, but this is coming from the CDC, and this was reported in late June. So this is, for reference, I think things started to get serious maybe towards the end of February, definitely in March. So in just a few months, this is what the CDC has to report. Anxiety and depression symptoms were up 31%. Started or increased substance abuse, 13%. Trauma/stressor-related disorder symptoms, 26%. And seriously considering suicide, 11%. I don't want to go into more of the morbid statistics just because I think that those statistics alone illustrate enough, and I'll try to actually get a screen grab of that and throw it up. But that's from the CDC, and I can only imagine that while these numbers, I would have wanted to see them go down over time, I think they've probably only increased or maybe stayed the same. And I kind of think it's due to the fact that we've started paying better attention to mental health during the pandemic, as there have been an increase in suicides. There has been an increase in people searching for help, whether by traditional means or untraditional means of looking on the internet and trying to find, some mental health guru blog or website out there. And I think both ways are totally fine, but I think we have to start being a little bit more conscientious about what we put our energy towards and what is going to be best in the long run. Because if this year has demonstrated nothing else, we need to get to a place where we can be more content with ourselves. But content can't mean complacent. And I think that this is one of those things where people have to make the distinction. So, for instance, before this pandemic, I was heavily involved in jiu-jitsu. I'd actually just gotten into it for about 3 months. I would go sometimes twice a day, at least 5 days a week, and I loved it. It was everything. It was a great workout. It was a good stress reliever. It was a good humbling experience, and I think actually it had a lot of good effects for my mental health. That alongside with meditation, Wim Hof breathing, going to my therapy. So I had a pretty, decent situation going. the pandemic hits, and I guess this is why I wanted to take some time before I came back, is because I did get complacent. And jiu-jitsu went to the wayside immediately due to the lockdown and the circumstances. So I lost that outlet. I was able to see my therapist, but it was only virtual, and for a while, because of how crazy my schedule had to change for school and other things, I was only maybe seeing him once a week or maybe every other week for a little while. Well, I usually see him once a week, so for a while it was every other week. And so this just is a little example when compared to, I know what other people have as outlets and what other people use to give themselves some relief and some therapy. And I understand that these things are maybe small in the grand scheme of things, and obviously I don't have any animosity towards the situation. However, I saw that I needed to adapt maybe a month or so into lockdown, because I initially thought, well, at least I still have my breathing and I can go out for walks, which, by the way, was a very big help for me. Getting outside and just walking around. It wasn't supposed to be intense exercise. It was more just getting outside, being with nature, having fresh air, being in sunlight. These are all things that are good for your mental health. These are things that bring on the feel-good chemicals and your endorphins and what have you. So I digress. When I realized things had started to kind of fall into the wayside as far as my self-care went, it all hit me at once, like a ton of bricks. And as often a lot of anxiety and depression symptoms do, is it always seems like this is not great, I don't love this, but we put up with it, we deal with it till the point where it's almost unbearable. And I think that for me, this highlighted the fact that this has to be the ongoing discussion. This has to be the ongoing practice for, and I want to say everyone, but I think for the majority of people, because you can't count on certain things running in the way that they used to run. I mean, again, there's just not that much stability right now. And that brings on a lot of inherent anxiety for people, because people don't like instability. People don't like having to make dramatic changes. People have lost their jobs. People have lost, unfortunately, loved ones in this situation. So it's a lot to handle, regardless of whether you're in the mild category of things, that being, like, I would say for me, in all honesty, I would consider my situation very mild. Not being able to go to jiu-jitsu, not being able to, I can go lift weights now, I guess, but I still have a responsibility to certain at-risk individuals around me. So for me, I guess my biggest loss was jiu-jitsu, which I would say is a mild inconvenience at best, because there are other ways I can stay active, and there are other ways and other things that I can do to humble myself and get those effects. Is it the most ideal way? Is it the way that I want to do it? No. But I had to make a choice, and I had to implement a practice to make sure that I wasn't going to be affected adversely. And as someone who's been in those dark depths of depression and anxiety and all that, and having, once contemplated suicide and all that, it's very difficult to sustain what you have when you're in a place of wellness. Because again, that complacency just starts creeping in. I guess all of this is just to say, if there's not a lot that you can do, if you can't, let's say, afford therapy, if you actually still don't have access to a gym or a place where you can go and work out, if you are lacking in a lot of things, I think the one thing that you can flip the switch on is how you approach this whole situation, whether it be lockdown or fear of the virus or whatever. Is we have to change the perspective. And instead of saying, well, look at everyone and look at all these rates of, substance abuse, look at all these rates of suicide, look at all these rates of anxiety and depression, and instead of taking on a woe is me kind of mentality, we have to take on the, what can I do for the sake of my wellness? What can I practice? What can I implement to combat all of these new challenges and all these new factors in our lives? Because in one way or another, we all are going to face different challenges at different phases at different times. And I think that, if anything, I'm surprised that there hasn't been a more unifying response to this, because, and I'm not saying that in the sense of you should gather all together, because obviously that goes against lockdown regulations. We're going to be good. But that is to say, we should actually be providing more support, and there should be a certain level of empathy that we have for others. And whether it's friends, family, or loved ones, you have to start flipping the switch on this woe is me mentality, because just like a virus, it is contagious. That kind of thing starts to bring so many people down. And when you live in a house with, let's say, or if you live with a roommate or you have anyone around you, when that darker mentality starts to set in, this idea of, we're just going to be depressed and anxious until the world recovers, that becomes a scary idea to me. I think, in fact, saying we are all facing some level of adversity, and we need to all do our part so we can achieve wellness, so we can get to a healthier, happier place. And I think that's what this virus is highlighting. And I think in both ways, the virus is highlighting at-risk individuals, whether it be obesity or smokers, having more adverse reactions to catching or having the virus, or whether it's the adversity of the lockdown, having to be maybe inside more, having to see less people less often in less places and less activities. It's all valid. And I think it all highlights the fact that we have to step up to the plate here. The same way you have to take care of yourself and make sure that you have a balanced diet and that you're getting out and exercising is the same thing we have to do when it comes to mental health and mental illness. And so I think the biggest favor you can do to yourself and the people around you is to say, I am going to do X, Y, and Z to help myself be in a more healthy place, to find a place of wellness, to take care of my psyche. Because furthermore, the truth of the matter is if you cling on to this mentality of, I have to wait for the world to get back to normal, we don't know what that's going to look like anymore. People were making predictions 2 months into this thing. People were making predictions 6 months into this thing. People are still making predictions that don't seem to totally align with what is happening now. And it looks like there is some promising, preventatives and vaccines on the way. But I think that until we really see how this is going to look a year from now, or until we really see what this is going to look even 6 months from now, we have to start taking more personal responsibility, and we need to start stepping up to the plate for ourselves and for the people around us and for our community. So let's try to deploy positive practices. Let's try to stop throwing pity parties and start motivating one another to do more for ourselves and to do better for ourselves. So that's kind of the message I wanted to get out on my first back onto YouTube. The face on the camera is just so bizarre, but it feels good to be back, and it feels good to be just talking about the thing that I really love and care about the most. And if you guys want me to go into maybe resources or things I did as far as finding ways around dealing with whether it's the adversity of the lockdown or maybe my journey from where I was till now and why I took a break, I'd be happy to make a video on either of those topics. And I have some other things in the works currently, but I'm very excited. I'm very glad to have an opportunity and to now be in a position where I find myself with time to make messages like this. And frankly, if it only touches one person and if it only impacts one person to try and make one little change, if that's going to be like a 10-minute meditation, if that's going to be a 15-minute walk, whatever the case may be, I hope someone finds this helpful. And I hope that we really all start taking a better approach to all of this. We have to take care of ourselves. We can't wait around for our environment, our setting, the world to turn into something that fits, a mold we already had. So thank you guys so much for listening. This is hopefully going to be the start of a very exciting comeback. But yeah, love you all and goodbye. Were you expect? Oh, that's right. GAD out.